going to talk about grit now. And before we discuss the details of that, I'm going to give you a little bit of background about what helped me to develop grit. And I'm going to tie it into the pro wrestling stuff that we talked about earlier. So you thought it was just going to be a game, but I tricked you. It's going to be a history lesson too, and also a lesson in grit. This website is called scientificwrestling.com. This is the system that I study under. Coach Jake Shannon, who was taught by Billy Robinson, who is from Lancashire. So this is written by Mark Hewitt. It's called Before MMA number 2. It's the second part in the series. East meets West, 1905. Catch as Catch Can takes on Jiu-Jitsu. And you see here there's an article, How I Break Deadly Jiu-Jitsu Holds by George Botner. So we're going to read a little bit about their match. But here's a background of Catch as Catch Can wrestling from the Lancashire tradition. It was developed in the Lancashire district of England in the 18th century. Its origin was based on the ancient up and down fighting brought to that area by the Flemish weavers. These craftsmen from Flanders began coming to England in the 1300s to work in the textile trade and later to escape persecution as Protestant Christians during the War of the Spanish Succession. Up and down fighting was a brutal art that involved not only ground grappling, but also kicking, strangling, eye gouging, headbutting, and submission holds. Competitors even wore spiked boots, that was called purring, during these savage matches. The fighting style was eventually modified somewhat and sanitized into Lancashire Catch as Catch Can, which is what I basically do, when it became a popular professional sport in the mid-18th century. Pro catch wrestlers like Edwin Bibby, Joe Acton, Tom Connors, Jim Faulkner, and Jim Parr took their unique grappling style across the Atlantic Ocean, where it experienced tremendous growth. So we're going to read a little bit about the match between a jiu-jitsu practitioner. His name was Katsuguma Higashi, and a catch-it wrestler named George Botner. So just to give you a little idea, I'm going to read this paragraph here. The two gladiators from different corners of the globe met in the center of the ring and shook hands. Time was called, and the battle commenced. Higashi immediately assumed the role of aggressor. He went right after Botner, grabbing his collar with both hands. Higashi had insisted on that they wear jackets for the match. That's not something that was typical in catch wrestling. So it was to give him something that was more adaptive to his style. The jiu-jitsu expert was working methodically to tighten the folds of the jacket around Botner's throat and choke him out. O'Brien had coached the American in advance in defending himself against this tactic, so he quickly pulled some slack into his collar. Although try as he might, he couldn't shake Higashi loose. Higashi maintained the grip and proceeded to pull Botner down to his knees. He then wrapped an additional fold of cloth over Botner's face, but the catch wrestler resisted, broke free, and rose to his feet. Higashi attacked again, latched onto Botner's collar, and forced him to the mat, all the while working to choke the breath out of his opponent. The American was warily biding his time, defending himself against the chokehold, and waiting for an opening. Higashi kept busy, tugging, pulling, and twisting the cloth around Botner's neck while holding him down firmly. In the midst of the struggle, Higashi lost his grip. Like a lightning bolt, Botner went into action. He dropped to one knee and grabbed his antagonist's right leg with his left hand. Botner's work was likened to an octopus using its tentacles. For the first time, Higashi was on the defensive, and he struggled wildly. Botner continued to unleash his catch-can arsenal. He secured a neck fold, cinched up on the leg lock, and slowly pressed his advantage. With almost irresistible grappling skill, Botner slowly and decisively planted Higashi's shoulder squarely on the canvas. That's a pin. This was a match that was best of 5, fair pinfall. Botner was awarded for the first fall. After 14 minutes and 35 seconds of grueling battle, Higashi refused to stop wrestling and held on to Botner from the bottom position. Referee Hurst finally managed to separate the grapplers, and Botner rose up to deafening applause. So Botner goes on to win the match, but it was by no means easy, and it was hotly contested by Higashi. He claimed that he had gotten the 3 fair back falls, but it was not the case. So this is what Botner had to say after the match. He further reflected, "I suffered more injuries that day than in any other contest I had ever engaged. It was a test as to which could hold out the longer. I knew that if I weakened, I would be so badly garroted that I could not continue the match, and that I might even get a broken neck. I began to wheeze. Spots danced before my eyes, and I felt my face suffused with blood. When he began to garrote me, I'll remember that if I live to be 100. So I want you guys to think about that and reflect a minute on what kind of grit, resilience, tenacity it took to get through and then win that match.